Welcome to the Fierce and Fit Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Clarice Yau, a holistic health coach dedicated to helping women over 40 achieve their fittest, fiercest selves. Each week, we'll dive deep into the unique challenges of menopause, including belly fat, weight gain, muscle building, hormonal imbalances, and more. These episodes are recorded live from my free Facebook group, Fierce Women Sculpting Powerful Bodies and Champion Mindsets. Be sure to check the link in the show notes to join our incredible community and access free content, challenges, and resources designed just for you. And this live is what your belly shape reveals and why it's not just fat. And this is a part of the Fierce Women community where we sculpt powerful bodies and champion mindsets. This community specifically is the premier space for women over 40 plus to be their fittest and fiercest selves. This is a platform where we want women over 40 to be able to share their struggles and feel like it's normal, to feel like it's normal to have belly fat, to feel like it's normal to be hard to build muscle, and to feel that it's safe to share these struggles, to feel seen, heard, and valued. Yes, so this is something that's very important to me and the mission of my community. If you miss my founder's interview story of how I founded this and my vision behind this, you can drop founder's interview below. We can send you the link to that live. Okay, so let's actually dive into it now. The topic of what your belly shape reveals and why it's not just fat. So kind of diving into this, we're going to give you a foundation mindset first, okay? So the foundation mindset I want you to have is first to understand there's two types of fat. There's actually three, but we're going to talk only about, there's the balloons. We're only going to talk about two different kinds of fats so that you can understand their role in your body, okay? So there is subcutaneous fat and there's visceral fat. Now, before I describe these fats, I know that most people on here know this, but I am going to go from these two types of fat to describe to you 6 types of belly shapes. All right. So you want to stay tuned. You want to stay plugging in because I am going to break down 6 different types of shapes, but you have to foundationally understand the types of fat first. Okay. So the two types of fat, like I said, is subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. Now, subcutaneous fat is the fat that is right underneath your skin, right? Just right underneath that you can pinch. It's usually at the surface level. Now, subcutaneous fat is not as dangerous. It's typically more of a cosmetic thing, right? It's a cosmetic, more like how you look, right? It has impact on your hormones. It's not super dangerous. It's more just like you want to be leaner. Now, how do you actually gain subcutaneous fat? Because some of you will have subcutaneous fat on your bodies, right? Everybody go grab your skin or grab your body. Do you have subcutaneous fat underneath your skin? Yes? Put subcutaneous fat if you're like, yeah, like do you feel like you have a layer of fat on your skin? That top layer is subcutaneous, okay? So you can gain subcutaneous fat from eating too much, surplus of calories. Okay. Now, surplus of calories can come from eating too much good food. Okay. So I want you to listen to that carefully. I have once said this before to all my clients and to people watching my live. If you eat too much of anything, you will gain weight. You will gain body weight and fat. Too much protein, too much carbs, too much fat can all turn into excess fat in your body. But the quality of your food is really important. So if you eat healthy and you're eating a lot of healthy food, but you still have fat, then you potentially might have a lot of subcutaneous fat, which is typically over excess of calories of healthy food will be stored on the surface more like that cushion to help your body use it because it's like, okay, well, it's giving me extra, so I'm going to store it on the surface. So why is this important? Because your surface subcutaneous fat is not as dangerous. However, this is why I tell a lot of my clients, if you don't have the right a combination in amounts, like you don't eat the right amounts of protein, carbs, and fat, you could still have fat on your body. So here goes that logic for a lot of people who talk to me. Oh, but I eat healthy. I don't know why I still have fat on my body. And so the answer is maybe that could be that you're eating in the wrong ratios and the wrong amounts that are causing that surface level fat. Okay. So who here falls into that class? Like you're like, I eat really healthy, but I still have fat. Who thinks that's them and has that surface level kind of fat on top? Because if you're like, I eat really healthy, I feel like I do avoid inflammation markers, I do like all of that, but you still have fat, then this could be you, that you're eating in surplus of the good ingredients of good food and in the wrong ratios. Okay. So put below if you are like a subcutaneous fat, that maybe that's me. Okay. Put subcutaneous fat. Now, the second type of fat is the bigger issue here. Okay. So the second type of fat is visceral fat. So the second type of fat, like I said, visceral fat is the bigger topic. Okay. So visceral fat is the fat that is underneath your abs, below the abs, intra abdominal against your organs. Most of you may have heard of visceral fat being extremely dangerous. So, this type of fat is caused by a lot of stress, hormonal imbalance, insulin resistance, and it has really high metabolic risk, right? If you have watched a lot of my lives, you'll know that the visceral fat sits inside and it's like a inflammation breeding ground. It releases a lot of inflammatory molecules like interleukin 6, TNF alpha. These are inflammatory molecules, and they are often a precursor to things like inflammatory autoimmune diseases as well as precancerous cells. So belly fat intra-abdominal is very inflammatory, right? Now, I want to go through 7 types of metabolic conditions that can come about from visceral fat. So I want everybody to kind of focus on the visceral fat because subcutaneous fat, some of you probably have it. Yes, you might have mixture of both subcutaneous and visceral, but out of the two, visceral is more dangerous. So I'm going to go through 7 metabolic areas that having visceral fat could potentially indicate. And I want you, as you listen, to put in the comments which metabolic syndrome do you feel like you have? Because by identifying which metabolic syndrome you potentially have, you might be able to identify the type of fat you have. Then it's better and easier for you to understand the shape and type of belly shape that you have. Okay. So let's go first into the first metabolic syndrome of visceral fat is, potentially getting like type 2 diabetes or having very like stubborn belly fat. So like metabolic syndrome. So the first part of visceral fat is like you're going to find yourself being potentially insulin resistant. You will have poor blood sugar control and you find that whatever you eat, you just gain weight. I hear that a lot. Whenever I eat, I just feel like I still gain, right? And blood sugar is off through the roof. And often metabolic syndrome like this is prediabetes or diabetes, right? So if you have metabolic syndrome, very stubborn belly fat, potentially prediabetes, poor blood sugar control, that is one symptom of visceral fat. Okay. Another one, second syndrome of visceral fat is cardiovascular. Okay. So, cardiovascular for visceral fat is if you actually have bad LDLs, like the cholesterol LDL. If you go to get your blood work, do you have good high HDL or do you have the LDLs, right? Like the bad lipids and cholesterols. If you have that, then you potentially have more cardiovascular risk, right? And this cardiovascular risk means that you'll have more potential hardening of the arteries, right? So, that is something for you to keep in mind. Maybe you have cardiovascular risk if you have visceral fat and also high blood pressure. Anybody here with high blood pressure? If you have high blood pressure, this could mean you have cardiovascular risk of the visceral fat. Okay. The third type is cognitive. Okay. Cognitive effects of visceral fat is that you're going to have a lot of inflammatory molecules being secreted from the visceral fat, and it crosses the blood brain barrier. This impairs neuron signaling, and it will lead to impaired brain functioning, poor memory, poor focus, increased risk of Alzheimer's, and depression. Who here experiences maybe brain fog, hard to focus, that type of thing? If you have that, you should put that below because that's telling you have some cognitive inflammation related to visceral fat. Okay, so that is cognitive. The fourth area is your immune system. Okay, if you are getting sick a lot, if you feel inflamed a lot, your visceral fat is a inflammatory land. Like I told you, it's inflammatory factory. So if you are often feeling very inflamed, it's called meta-inflammation, where it sends out inflammatory molecules throughout your body. Number 5 is, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Listening on Spotify, tap that 5-star rating. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a quick review. It really helps the show reach more women. Hormonal impact of visceral fat. So visceral fat will imbalance your cortisol, your estrogen, and your leptin. So as most of you know, visceral fat creates a cortisol loop, okay? Stress increases visceral fat because basically cortisol, in a short form, deposits fat into the visceral area when you are stressed. So if you're stressed all the time and you have belly fat, that can be an indication. If you have estrogen dominance, so estrogen dominance means that your body is hormonal imbalance. Its estrogen is higher than the surrounding hormones. So if the estrogen dominance is not good, in the sense of like you don't want to recycle estrogen into your body, as I said many times, visceral fat actually is not even recycling estrogen. Visceral fat actually creates aromatase. It actually converts androgens into estrogen. So it's actually creating more estrogen into your body. And estrogen, high levels of estrogen, means you will store more fat in your body. So this could also be impacts of cortisol, estrogen, and leptin resistance. If you have visceral fat, you may also have leptin resistance, which means leptin is that hormone that makes you feel full. If you have lots of visceral fat, it will stop the signal for you to be, to feel full. So if you're not going to feel full, or you're going to have a lot of cravings, that can be an indication of the hormone imbalance, okay? The leptin resistance. So again, so if you think about, I'm trying to get you guys to think about symptoms in your own body. So you're like, do I have like hormonal imbalance? Do I feel like, I have like cravings or high cortisol? Do I feel stressed a lot in my system? Then, and you have a belly fat, then this can be the hormonal impact of visceral fat. Okay, so put that below what type you have. So that's number 5. That's hormonal, and then the number 6 is thyroid. So the thyroid impact of visceral fat is that you will experience cold hands and feet and sluggish kind of energy, and just feeling like not burning calories. And then the last one that a lot of women actually don't like, if you have belly fat and you're experiencing muscle loss, hard time building muscle, feeling like weaker, these are the impact of visceral fat sending out inflammatory molecules in your system, and it actually stops the mTOR pathway. So the mTOR pathway is super important for protein synthesis, right? And so when you have a lot of visceral fat and inflammation in your body, it will actually stop muscle growth, and it will increase your rate of sarcopenia. Something I want you guys to pay attention to, okay, is there's a term called sarcopenic obesity. What this means is there's a lot of people who are really concerned about weight. Like, I want to stay a certain weight, but Sarcopenic obesity means that you can be losing muscle rapidly in your body, but staying the same weight. Isn't that scary? You could be staying the same weight, but rapidly losing muscle mass on your body. And so don't rely on just weight. I know Debbie and I had talked about it in one of her sessions. She's like, I thought I was doing okay. My weight wasn't fluctuating a whole lot. But actually, sarcopenic obesity is you staying the same weight, but in the background, your muscle is losing really fast. Okay. So this is going to come as a result of visceral fat sitting in the background. Okay. So I want you guys to look down. How many of you guys, after I've described all of this, would say, okay, Clarice, yeah, I have visceral fat. If you have visceral fat, I want you to put visceral fat below. Okay, put visceral fat below. And this is really important, see, because this is a thing that I want you guys to get really clear on, because people tell me, oh, yeah, I have a little bit of extra fat on my body. But that doesn't tell me anything. You have to identify the type of fat, because visceral fat is so much more dangerous than subcutaneous fat, right? The 6 types of belly shapes or belly types. As I describe each one, I want you to identify and put it in the comments which one you think you might be, okay? So could you be a mix? Absolutely, of course, but it's like you could be a mix of one or two, but it will help you identify kind of which area you're sitting in. All right. Now, number 1 shape, okay, is the stress belly. Okay. The stress belly will typically look like a lower ab pouch. The stress belly comes from chronic cortisol, that comes from having the cortisol elevated and then the blood sugar staying elevated in your system. Insulin has to over respond, and then your body doesn't know what to do with blood sugar, so it will pack it down into your belly, particularly the lower part. Okay. And why that is that, like, there are certain sites within your belly that is more susceptible to stress, more susceptible to responding to that cortisol. Like, in simplified terms, like cortisol magnets, and they like magnetize that fat to them. And typically, a lot of this will kind of appear more into the lower abdominal and affect the gut health, right? So this is why it could be like upper is flat and then lower is more of a pouch. And a little bit of science behind this would be like, when cortisol is super high, it activates something called LPL, which is lipoprotein lipase. This is an enzyme that is on the surface of the fat cells. And when cortisol is high, this enzyme pulls fat into the fat cells. Okay. So cortisol's high, LPL activity is high. It's going to pull fat molecules into the fat cells. You don't want that. But this is what's happening to your belly fat, potentially in that lower stress belly area, because it is high stress. It's cortisol. It's spiking. And so LPL activity is super high. And when cortisol is super high, it also suppresses a hormone, HSL, which is a hormone sensitive lipase. Hormone sensitive lipase is the hormone that releases fat into your body, meaning let's go of fat so that you could get rid of. Okay. But when you have high cortisol, it suppresses this HSL hormone and it cannot release fat out. Okay. So this is why learning to control stress is super important. So this first type of belly, I want you guys to look down or think about your pictures that you've taken or the way you wear your clothes. Do you have relatively, like, it's pretty flat kind of upper, but as you go down, it becomes more of a pouch like? That could be a stress belly. Okay. So you can identify below, do you think you have a type 1 stress belly? And Debbie says for sure she has a stress belly. And also going back to those symptoms too, of course, if you feel really stressed, you probably do have a stress belly of some sort. Okay. Now, also, one more thing with the stress belly is, I already mentioned it earlier, but the stress belly will also suppress your muscle building hormones like DHEA and GH growth hormone. So this is important because if you're trying to build muscle and you have a stress belly, this is the first thing you need to learn to control is the stress belly. Okay. So number two shape is bloated belly. Okay. So a bloated belly looks a little bit different. It is a little bit more distension of the belly. So it kind of pushes outwards, and how it will operate is that the belly will look and feel relatively flat when you get up in the morning. But as you go through the day, as you eat different foods and go throughout the day, you find yourself, your belly starts to bloat out and starts to get bigger and bigger till by the end of the day, you have quite a swollen belly. Number three, estrogen dominant belly is a different type of belly. All right. This type of belly is soft. Okay. Soft belly. But this type of belly is like soft and it kind of like distributes to your hips and thighs. And I can think of a few clients because I know everybody's pictures that I coach that kind of look like that, right? It's not just in the belly, but like there's excess fat in the belly to the hips and to the thighs. Like there's a lot of fat distributing to that lower area. That is an indication of potential estrogen dominance. And so, what does this mean? It means that your estrogen to progesterone levels is imbalanced. It doesn't mean you have super high estrogen, it just means that you have higher estrogen compared to progesterone, which, by the way, happens to every menopausal woman because at menopause, your progesterone drops, right? So every menopausal woman potentially will struggle with lower progesterone, but it's just how much of this, okay? So if you have high estrogen compared to progesterone and you have a sluggish detoxification system in your liver, because your liver detoxes your system, then you will potentially find yourself having more lower abdominal fat and in the hips and the thighs. Okay, so so think about your own fat distribution. And what does this mean? This means that you have potentially poor hormone recycling and poor liver detoxification pathways, which is called methylation processes. Okay. So, this estrogen dominant belly, it's very important that you learn to support the liver better and you have better estrogen detoxification, and I speak a little bit about fiber and things like that and your gut health. So the next belly is insulin resistance belly. Or okay, so the insulin resistance belly is a really tough one. Okay, the insulin resistance belly is a type of belly that looks thick, firm, and like 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 how do you say it, firm, thick midsection. So I've coached multiple women where it's like they just look like a solid trunk in the middle, right? There's no really a waistline. It's just they're solid in the middle, and it's very like stiff and firm and hard, and it's kind of like a stiff trunk. Okay, this is very indicative of insulin resistance belly. And so why is this? Because if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Listening on Spotify, tap that 5-star rating. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a quick review. It really helps the show reach more women. Insulin resistance contributes to that visceral fat I talked about that sits way behind the abdominal walls, right? And it kind of pushes outwards, so it has that very distended, very stiff kind of feeling, right? And I already mentioned a lot about visceral fat and all the impacts. So what we need to understand is if you have a thicker trunk and you don't really have a waistline, it's kind of stiff like that, it means you have potentially that insulin, your insulin is not operating well. It's going to be putting on that visceral fat, and it's going to be very high inflammation in your system, right? I spent a long time talking about visceral fat earlier. So it's going to have high inflammation in your system. If you have this particular situation, so if you have insulin resistance belly, this one, I will say, requires a little bit higher level programming. This is one that I would say, if you're coming to the long-term implementation workshop, that is going to be a good starter step. But this is where some of the higher level programs like FFF, Transformation, Muscle Accelerator, where you have to target in to fix the metabolic issue. This is a very deep metabolic issue, and it can't just be on the surface level fixed. And so you want to think of levels of surface. The 14-day bloat buster will hit that first level, kind of surface level bloat. And it is important to first kind of work on that. Then the next step implementation workshop will kind of work that next level that is kind of important to bring down some of that belly that is, you could say, more surface level, if you want to call it like that. Whereas when it becomes a metabolic issue like deep insulin resistance, deep inside your trunk, and it is chronically inflaming your body, metabolically active, sending inflammatory molecules into your hepatic portal vein, sending it through the heart, sending it through the brain. This is not simple to get rid of, okay? You can't just eat less. You can't just exercise more, okay? This is actually one of the types of belly fats that I speak a lot on my lives about. The ones who are like, no matter what they do, they cannot get rid of their fat, their belly fat. This is usually an indication of a metabolic issue, an insulin resistant type belly. Okay. So if you're listening to this, I want you to think about, like, do you have a very thick trunk and it's kind of like thick, distended midsection, and it doesn't really change a whole lot. Even when you try to diet or do different things, your midsection just stays like that. Put it below if you have type 4 belly, which is insulin resistant belly. Number 5 is thyroid belly. Okay, so thyroid belly looks different as well. Thyroid belly is usually soft, but puffy and very watery, logged. Okay, so why? Because the thyroid really impacts things related to water retention and stuff like that. It creates generalized bloat throughout your body. What do I mean by that? Generalized bloat is your face gets puffy, your fingers get puffy, your arms are puffy. I've seen this in my clients that I've worked with that have been in my programs. So thyroid belly is related to generalized bloat throughout the body, but it has a couple other things that will tell you that you have potentially thyroid belly is fatigue and cold skin. So if you are fatigued all the time and you have cold hands and feet and you have a big belly and you feel waterlogged all the time, this is potentially an indication of thyroid belly. So with thyroid belly, what is potentially happening is your thyroid gland is actually malfunctioning or slowing down. This is due to multiple issues, including estrogen dropping and other issues that could happen, like in Hashimoto's or Graves' disease and stuff like that. But you can have low thyroid. This will decrease basal metabolic rate. And because your whole metabolism drops from your thyroid, you will have more fluid retention. Your mitochondrial activity in your cellular activity will slow down. And so that is why you feel sluggish, low energy, and water retention is a lot. Okay. So this could be thyroid belly. All right. So number 6 is called the low tone belly. What do I mean by that? This means that your belly has not a lot of muscle tone, and this will cause your belly to fold or sag, fold over or sag. So, for example, Debbie's belly kind of folds in a couple areas and kind of, just kind of folds in different areas. Okay. Do you have a belly that folds over or has a little bit of kind of unevenness there? Okay. So if it's soft, it has multiple creases, it kind of feels a little bit loose, soft, kind of like that. Okay. This typically means loss of muscle tone and collagen, and it comes from lowered estrogen and testosterone and growth hormone. So we know that as you enter menopause, you're going to be dropping estrogen anyways. And most of you already know that as a result, your collagen will drop, a whole bunch of things will drop off in your body, right? You guys all know this, right? So what does this mean? If you have a very like loose or folded belly, it means most likely you are not strength training enough to build sufficient muscle in your body. Okay. And this is quite common when I first meet people. A lot of women who first come to me, their belly looks like a combination of some of the other ones above, plus very low tone because they don't strength train or they don't know how to strength train well. No, doing abs is not just the only way to get stronger there. Okay. It's about building overall muscle tone, improving growth hormone, testosterone, insulin growth factor. And this is the reason why lifting is extremely important to also the look of how that midsection will look, how that belly will look. Okay. And so this is an indication for you if we're thinking, okay, now what do I have to do? Is if you have kind of this like multiple creases, multiple loose kind of like, yes, it's fat, but that type of fat could be, yes, subcutaneous fat, but also potentially low collagen, low tone, low growth hormone. You may not be lifting proper enough. You need to get onto a good lifting type program, as well as understanding nutrition in terms of like protein building or muscle building nutrition, right? So the belly types that you're listening to, you're like, I have this or I have this. I feel like my belly is this shape. You're going to probably like think on this or re-listen to this to think about what kind of belly you have. They all play into one another, right? There is like a domino effect. So I'm going to kind of give you a bit of the pathway that this takes. And this is why everybody benefits from 14-day bloat buster. Why? Because it's like step one, right? Everybody is benefiting from 14-day bloat buster because you need step one. And then we're going to go into step two. And some of you need to go further to step 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to explain the pathway that, causes the belly fat and how it impacts the different types of belly. So number one, if you have stress, then you will impact cortisol. High cortisol impacts high insulin resistant, meaning it does not work with sugar well and it will not know what to do with the sugar. It can't move it into the muscle cells like it wants to. So blood sugar stays high and then it is in the bloodstream. Your body doesn't like that. So it's going to actually take that and put it as belly fat. And then it's going to have a hard time metabolizing that, all the excess sugar and all of that. And it could lead to fatty liver. Fatty liver means that then your liver is not functioning well, cannot process things well, can then lead to poor estrogen clearance. So poor estrogen clearance means it cannot detox out properly, just like I said. And poor estrogen clearance will lead to estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance means that now estrogen is too high in your system. And therefore, now you have a dominant estrogen dominant pattern in your system, causing, like I said, like the bloating, the retention of excess fat in your thighs, lower body. Then estrogen dominance will cause further inflammation in your body, creating gut inflammation. And then gut inflammation is going to cause nutrient malabsorption in your system. Nutrient malabsorption in your system will eventually cause further hormonal breakdown in your body that will slow down your thyroid. So your thyroid now starts to get impacted by poor nutrient absorption. Poor thyroid control now causes the cascade effect of all other hormonal decline. All other hormonal decline means that all the hormone systems in your body starts going out of whack. And then all the systems and hormones going out of whack will actually impact muscle because it will start to stop muscle building process and it will start to burn muscle off your body. And then when you start to burn muscle off your body, you're going to start to lose muscle tone in your body. And now you could have potentially all of them. This is why I wanted to share this pathway with you, because when you listen to it, you're like, OMG, like, this is why menopausal women have such a difficult time with belly fat.
Like I always say, belly fat is a beast on its own. And you cannot usually target it from just one angle. You have to hit it from multiple angles, and you have to know how to hit it from the right levels of intervention. The right levels of intervention is based on, what kind of belly do you have? What are you more likely to have? Like we talked about the 6 types of belly shapes, but if they mix, if they have a mix, like because of this pathway, then you're going to need more help with it. Hey, I know my famous Clarice detox tea everybody loves. It's coined, well loved, and popular. But the truth is, it's great as a first step. But you cannot drink that detox tea away your belly fat. Okay, it is impossible. You must hit multiple other layers. And this is why I always say to so many of the people that we're talking to who loves the free challenges and loves all of these things, is you're always only hitting level 1. And then you come back and do another challenge, and then you're hitting level 1. And then you come back and do another challenge, and then you hit level 1. And the only people that you see who actually have phenomenal changes, they actually can have longer permanent flattening of the belly because they have gone through the levels and the protocols. And this is what I want to help people understand, is this whole concept of not fooling yourself. Yeah. A lot of people fool themselves. I'm just going to do extra challenges. I'm just going to do this, and I am going to get rid of my belly fat. The answer is no, you are not going to get rid of the belly fat. You are going to potentially decrease some bloat, and it is going to help you have a great first step and prime your system for step 2. You must advance to step 2 to then help you address that next level of belly.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Listening on Spotify, tap that 5-star rating. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a quick review. It really helps the show reach more women.
For some people, if your belly fat or situation is not that severe, that very next level could work. That is why some people in that next level program and the implementation workshop that I'll talk about have had great results. But for some, they can do that one, but that's not enough. They need to go to the next level, which then targets more specific to the macronutrients, micronutrients, hormonal balance. And then the next level, like strength training, how you put in the right training to build the muscles to, send the right hormone signals and blah, 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 right? So does this make sense to everybody? I'm hoping people understand this, because the thing I really don't like is I don't like band-aid solutions. I don't like people thinking that a meal plan gives you the solution. I don't like people thinking a challenge gives you the solution. A challenge is a really great first step, and it helps you prime the system like a canvas. Okay, if you have a piece of artwork and you need to paint on it, you need to prime it. So the challenge is great for that. The challenge is great for priming your system. But guess what? A lot of people do this. They come and do a great challenge and they prime it, and then they leave. And there is no extra things they do on top of that. So then they come back and prime it again. And then they prime it again. And so you keep priming your canvas, but there's no actual building of the picture on top. There's no sculpting. There's no body recomposition happening. Body recomposition, losing fat and building muscle, comes from building the picture on top of the primer. And this is why I want people to really, really take to heart and understand why you keep spinning your circles. I ask a lot of people why you have belly fat, how long? A lot of women tell me for a number of years. I have had 2 years, 3 years. I've even had 10 years. I've had even people say 15 years. And this is telling you that you need to take it a level further. So if you are listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of belly fat, or I have belly fat that she's describing all over. Maybe I have all 5. I don't know. You could have all 5 type. all together in one body, that would make it very difficult to drop that belly fat. But if you have all five, then you need to put below like belly fat or next step, because that's crucial for you, because you need to acknowledge like belly fat is not going to just come from drinking a detox tea. Belly fat is also not going to drop because you ate a good salad recipe that Clarice gave you. Belly fat comes from multiple formats, like I said, and I will explain more, and I'll continue to explain this in future lives. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I need to work on my belly fat, put belly fat below and or next steps, okay? To be honest with yourself, to not fool yourselves, okay? What my mentor once said, and I know Oshone knows this, humans have the greatest ability for self-deception. They can deceive themselves, and they think that that means their belly fat will drop and that they will lose weight. But actually, what most of the time it happens is you become infobese. I call it infobese. You just gather information on top of information on top of information, but there is actually no implementation involved, right? So, like I said, put below if you're like, I'm really serious about tackling this belly fat. Like I feel like I have multiple types of belly fat. If you feel like that is you, then put belly fat below, and that you are committed to your own change. Now, just to wrap up this as well, is an analogy I think that's going to really help you is the way to look at bloat versus belly fat. Okay. Bloat is kind of like the smoke from a fire. Okay. It's the smoke that comes out of the fire. When you try to get rid of bloat, it's really important to get rid of the smoke, because what happens if there's lots of smoke? You can't go into the room or you can't see anything, correct? So getting rid of bloat is very important to see what's going on. Okay, so everybody doing the 14-day bloat buster, it's important to take that bloat out so we can see what's going on. Yeah, so yes, it's a getting away the smoke, but the fire is belly fat, is bloat versus belly fat. Okay, the fire, the root of the problem is coming from the fire. You can keep fanning the smoke away, keeps fanning the smoke away, and that's exactly what happens with bloat. Bloat is like this. I lose 3 or 4 pounds and then feel good, and then it comes back. And then you're like, oh, fan it, fan it, fan it, fan it again. So the smoke goes away. Yeah. And then it comes back. Why? Because the fire underneath is still burning, which is your belly fat. And that's why the root of the issue is to actually address belly fat, not bloating. But bloating is the top of of where you need to get it cleared, right? And then you need to address the fire. And as you understand about fire, I want you to think about fires that come from different elements. Sometimes you need to put it out with different types of things, right? If you try to put water on gasoline, it's not going to work very well, right? If it's just fire, just regular fire from wood, okay, pour water on it, then the fire will go out, right? But if the fire came from gasoline, diesel, you put water on it and that fire is going to go crazy. The type of fire you have matters on what type of thing you use, what type of methodology you use to bring down that fire, bring down that belly fat. And that is why today I wanted you to think about this for yourself. What kind of belly fat do I have? What's the shape of my belly fat? Is it firm? Is it hard? Is it located higher up? Is it located lower down? Is it like spread all over? I want you to think about that, because it will tell you a little bit, give you a hint what kind of belly fat you're struggling with and kind of what types of approach you need. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good analogy. So hopefully that added value. If you enjoy this, recording or live, drop some hearts below. Tell me what you liked learning the most, and tell others about it, or tag them if they're in this group, if you know that they would love watching this live. Awesome. Put lots of hearts below and tell me what you learned. I like to know. And I hope you enjoyed today's live. I hope it was enlightening and you learned something new. All right. Okay. See you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fierce and Fit Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, or wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If something in this episode resonated with you, please leave a review or share it with a friend who'd love it too. Your support means the world and helps us reach more amazing women like you. Until next time, stay fierce, stay fit, and let's keep building your most powerful self.